Hey, this is Gary with Today for Tomorrow, and I'm super excited for today's video because I get to give you a tour of a brand new food forest that our foundation has planted in a local South Florida middle school. Now, if you've seen our other videos, you know we are huge fans of food forests. Food forests are just incredible ways for individuals to address so many pressing environmental challenges. And we're extra excited when we get an opportunity to do a food forest in a school because they really make incredible classrooms to teach the students all of those lessons in a hands-on way. So without further ado, let's hop into this food forest, and I'm going to give you a tour of this super cool food forest, and we can explain along the way some of the ways we can educate students in these food forests. Let's check it out. Okay, we've got roughly, I think it's 1,500 square feet of food forest here, and I'm going to get in there and give you a tour, but I wanted to give you an idea of the scale here. I think, well, yes, you can see my car there in the background, so it gives you an idea of the scale. So let's get in there and I'll show you what we planted and why. Alright, one of the things that we're doing in all of our food forests now is incorporating a section or throughout native species, and there's a lot of reasons that we as individuals should be planting native species, and we can get into that into some other videos, but most importantly is they are the plants that belong here, and they are the plants that the local wildlife depends on. Okay, really quickly though, I do want to make one comment here on natives. Be careful where you source them. In Florida, you can go to FANN, F-A-N-N, and that's a website that will show you native nurseries, and you can be guaranteed what you're getting there is native. I sourced a lot of my natives from there, but I also sourced some just local nurseries, and as it turns out, I think a couple of my plants, both the firebush and some milkweeds that were advertised as native, I don't think they are, so just a word of caution with that. So just a quick run through the natives here. You've got the tick seed, which is our state flower. You've got the kunti, which is so important for the Attala butterfly. The wild coffee, coral honeysuckle here, frog fruit. We have a firebush, which I am not so sure is native. Milkweeds back there, Jamaican caper. I think that's white indigo berries, Simpson stopper. Just a bunch of things down through here that will benefit the native species. And as you can see here, hopefully it'll catch it. Look at this beautiful little butterfly. I'm not sure what that is, but that's the idea right there. Now, oh, here we go. There's a monarch. Hopefully you'll catch that as well. And that's one of the butterflies that we're really trying to help here in our food forest. So let's get into the fruits and the different perennials we have here in the food forest. You know, it's easy to get kids excited about fruits because they taste good. It's not so easy to get them excited about greens and veggies. So I think it's important when you're doing a school garden to think about that, to keep them engaged. And food forests are just fantastic for that because there's always something growing in a food forest that those kids are going to want to eat. Okay, look at that monarch. All right, so in no particular order, here we have jaboticaba. And if you're not familiar with the tree, it's also called the Brazilian grape tree. And you can see right here on the trunk, here's some new little ones coming out. They're going to ultimately be about that big, the size of a good-sized grape, and they are just delicious. And it's so unique because they grow right on the bark of the tree. Just a fantastic kind of ever-bearing fruit tree for these kids. And that's what you want. You want something that's always, or several times a year, producing fruit when these kids are here. Obviously everything here blooms in the summer when they're not here, but we want fruit when they are here. Here's a really cool one. This is the June plum. So as you can see, it's got some nice plums on it, and they'll be ready. These ones will be ready in probably, I'd say, another month. And they get yellow and they're just delicious. And this fruit is just constantly, just non-stop on this tree all year long. And as you can see, it's a very small tree. I've got one in my backyard that's probably about 1.5 feet tall, and it's fruiting. And so you can keep it under control, and that's something you want too, is you want a short tree so that the kids can pick the fruit. Nobody's getting on ladders, nothing's getting out of control. June plum. Here's a fruit you might know. This is carambola or star fruit. Again, this is a really easy tree to grow down here, and it does fruit a couple of times a year, prolifically, just a ton of fruit. The kids love it. It's got a really interesting shape. When you cut it in a cross section, it looks like a star, and it's delicious. So we have 2 different star fruit varieties in this food forest. Moving on, papaya. Papaya is basically an ever-bearing fruit tree. Once it starts to produce fruit, as this one started, it just never stops. And you have about 4 years of papayas from a single papaya tree. Down here, this is passion fruit. And one of the things we're having a problem with, although this one has already produced fruit, is invasive green iguanas. Now that has been the story of not just this passion fruit vine, but a lot of the plants in this food forest is the iguanas. We are by a canal, and they have the water source, they have the food source they need, and they are crazy. There are literally, if I had to guess, probably 500 to 1,000 iguanas on this campus. No joke. And they want to eat young, fresh leaves. That's what they want. They don't seem to care what it is. There are some plants they don't eat, and we found, and I have found from planting food forests in this area, the things they won't eat, but basically they will eat almost anything that's young and fresh, and this passion fruit vine is testament to that. So it's been a constant challenge. Okay, here's the next fruit tree, and that's kaimito or star apple. Now, I've never grown that before, so I'm really excited to see it and to taste it. And it should start, it looks very healthy. It had fruit on it when I planted it, so we're looking forward to some nice fruit this school year. Moving on, bananas. We've got bananas throughout the garden. It's really easy. These are dwarf Cavendish. Just super easy to grow. Everybody loves bananas, and again, it's kind of a non-stop thing. Once they mature, the next one comes up, and then it produces bananas as well. Okay, next tree is avocado. We have 2 varieties of avocado. Down here in South Florida, we have avocados that will grow probably between all the varieties 7 or 8 months of the year for sure. So not just grow, of course, I mean fruit. So what we're looking for is to get 2 varieties in here, fruiting at 2 separate times during the school year, so that we have avocados for these kids, as much of the year as we can. We talked about iguanas, and you'll see this mesh over the mulberry here. Unfortunately, mulberries are one of the best things for the kids because they're kind of just like constantly popping mulberries, and the kids love them. Every time you cut them, they produce more mulberries. However, guess what else loves them? The iguanas. The iguanas basically defoliated this entire mulberry plant within a week. And so we have to put this over it for now. I really don't know what we're going to do long term. And these little guys here, these dinosaurs, we're supposed to scare them off. It worked for about a day or 2. One of my personal favorites is the sugar apple. This is just a delicious fruit if you've never had it. Again, it's going to fruit a couple times a year and produce multiple fruits for these kids. They're really going to love the sugar apple. There's another variety of the avocado. This one is a later fruiting variety, so they're going to get that later in the school year. Here we have loquat. If you're not familiar with it, it's a little grape-sized fruit, a little bit bigger, orange, really kind of cantaloupe-y taste. It's nice. It's a wonderful thing for the kids to pick and just enjoy while they're out here learning about things in the food forest. Another star fruit, a different variety. I think this is the heart variety. And you can see that it's flowering. How beautiful those little purple flowers are. And the nice thing is that means it's going to have fruit when these kids come back to school in a month. This one here is Mamey sapote. And you can see we've already picked some really nice big ones, about half the size of a football off of this. And you can see all the new ones coming on. And we've got another dinosaur down there, head in the dirt, not doing much. Fortunately, the iguanas don't really love the sapote. Back behind me here, we have a banana circle. It's not exactly a circle, but it's bananas planted in a group. And we do that because ideally we can then take trimmings from the food forest and what have you and throw it inside the center. That's a really nice place. Bananas love moisture, more moisture even than we get in South Florida. They're a rainforest plant and they love fertilizer. So it's a great way to grow these bananas, and it's an easy place to kind of dispose of and recycle our trimmings as we prune these trees. So here is our one edible green for the garden, and it's called Ibeca. And unfortunately, or people call it edible hibiscus, it's not technically a hibiscus, but unfortunately, the iguanas just love it. I mean, they denuded this plant the very first day. I don't really know what our long-term strategy is for this other than keeping it under a net. A wonderful thing about Ibeca is you just chop a piece off, as I did here, pop it in the ground, and there was nothing on that when I put it in 2-3 weeks ago. And you can see it's already a plant that's growing very vigorously. So if we ever get the iguanas under control here, maybe we can get enough Ibeca in this garden to kind of give the kids something to eat in their salads. This plant here, you're going to obviously know that's pineapple. I don't know what variety it is. But pineapple is great because the iguanas don't eat it, and it's really easy to grow, and the kids can literally take a pineapple top from their home and bring it in here and just plant it in the food forest. Now, one of the things that we do in the food forest is we try to control for weeds. You could say there's no such thing as a weed in a food forest, but on the other hand, how many weeds you have and what kind of weeds you have, particularly grasses, dictates how much effort you need to put into maintaining that food forest. So the idea there is a ground cover, a dedicated ground cover to kind of choke out the weeds and the grasses so that you don't have to constantly be chopping down whatever's on the ground there. So in this garden, my go-to is usually the perennial peanut. I tried that and the iguanas ate it up. So we chose a native called Sunshine Mimosa, which I'll show you here in a second. And we also chose fog fruit or frog fruit. This plant has like a million names. But it's another one that they do eat, but it seems to be fast enough that it still grows. And then we just have various lower things here, they're natives, just to take up space. So let's take a look at these ground covers now. Now you'll have to pardon me, I don't know the names of some of these here. This is the fog fruit or the frog fruit, I've heard it called both. But this little one here with the little round leaf, that just came naturally. That's here anyway, and I like it because it's short and it's gonna stay short, and that's what we want, is short. You'll see the Sunshine Mimosa in the background there. That's the one with the pink kind of powder puff flower. I'll see if I can get a prettier example of that. Here's the Sunshine Mimosa with its pretty flower, And you can see it's filling in nicely back here, and that's what I'm going for, is to get this entire garden on both sides to fill up primarily with that sunshine mimosa. Look at that sulfur butterfly. We have I think it's a Bahama senna. It's one of the native sennas, I guess, so maybe not for that sulfur butterfly, but unfortunately, as you can see here, the iguanas ate it. I'll try to bring in a bigger specimen. And then behind it we have beautyberry, which again the iguanas are eating, so it can be tough with these iguanas. Alright, one of the things we want to keep in mind when we're planting food forests is shading. So we all know the sun goes from the east to the west, morning to afternoon, but here in the northern hemisphere, the sun always has a southerly component, and that's why we always want to have south exposure for our garden. We want to plant the smallest things to the south and grade up to the tallest trees to the north, and that's what we've done here. So teaching in a food forest, what an amazing place to get a group of kids out and just learn. I mean, in this day and age, so many kids are just used to their food coming from the supermarket. They have zero connection to the land and how the food actually is grown. I think that's so important. And in a food forest, we can teach so much more. So I want to show you some of the lessons that I would like to teach these students this year in a food forest, and the teachers hopefully will as well. So behind me here, you see the sports field. And what you're going to see is grass. Now, if you look really closely, you might see 2, maybe 3 species of grass there. Not much biodiversity. Ideally, a lawn is just 1 species. And that requires a lot of pesticide, herbicides to kill the weeds, and the biodiversity is pretty much nil. Maybe just things that feed on grass. Contrast that with what the floor of the food forest looks like. Let's take a look at that. So any little section of our food forest, and I just saw a little lizard scamper away that's testament to this, has multiple species of plants, and that's because we don't have weeds in a food forest. They're just another member of the food forest. What you can do is get the kids to put a grid down in a section of the food forest and count the amount of species of plants and animals, insects that they encounter in a simple 2 or 3 foot grid. What a lesson in biodiversity. And when you really get down in it, you're going to see these lizards, you're going to see these bugs, and that really does show how nature works. Plant it, and something's going to come to exploit that resource. As you walk through this food forest, and particularly as this food forest gets bigger, it's going to be really easy to see the many environmental lessons you can teach here. Soil degradation, you could show them the soil, show the students the soil that's basically sugar sand down in this part of the world, and watch over time as all the microorganisms, the little bugs and just the fungus and the fungi and everything, break that stuff down and turn it into rich soil. The way everything in here works together as a system, it's so easy to talk about biodiversity, it's so easy to talk about habitat, carbon sink, carbon footprint. We can show them the trees, explain that half the dry weight of a tree is carbon. So these trees are just sequestering carbon all day, every day. So, you know, we could talk about food scarcity, we could talk about water scarcity, we could talk about food wastage. It's an easy place to take abstract concepts and ground them and make them real for these children. It's just a wonderful resource for these teachers in this school to have this year and for decades to come. Well, I hope you enjoyed that tour of this beautiful young food forest. I can't wait to just watch this thing grow. Things grow so quickly down here in South Florida, especially during the summer. It almost grows before your eyes. I can't wait for these kids to come back to school in another month here and enjoy this food forest. And I can't wait to help the teachers teach these kids wonderful environmental lessons right here in this outdoor classroom. Until then, I'm Gary with Today for Tomorrow, reminding you it's the little things we do in our daily lives today that have such a big impact in all of our tomorrows. Thank you for watching.